Welcome and thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Many of us go out each and every year and we make ourselves a New Year's resolution to clear our minds, bodies, and to basically balance our spirits. We want a new invigorating us. Sometimes we try to find nutritional ways to be able to balance our diet. We want to lose weight, or perhaps we just want to get fit by hitting the gym. It was estimated, based on something I read just recently, that Americans spend close to $12 billion a year. That's right, billion with a B, $12 billion a year on health club memberships. It's also estimated that about 80% of the people who actually buy these don't really use them at all. So much for the New Year's resolution. Perhaps it's about keeping it simple. After all, if you don't have to go somewhere to do something that perhaps starting off you really don't want to do, maybe you should start at home. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is a Kripalu yoga teacher with advanced certification and more than 30 years' experience of teaching and consulting in the healing arts. Her book today she's going to be talking about is The Fountain of Youth Exercises for Vitality, Radiance, Joy, and Fulfillment. And it's all in 15 minutes. So you might be able to do that just before you go to work or as you come home or whenever you feel the time is carved out. I'd like to welcome the Beyond 50 radio program today, our guest, Ms. Naomi Sophia Call. Naomi, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. It's a pleasure.
What a fun book. I mean, you got yoga, you got nutrition, and you got a rose in a martini glass of all things. Tell us about this.
Well, the cover image is a rose in a martini glass, and because the book is entitled Fountain of Youth Exercises, a lot of people have had this notion of this sipping of this elixir, and I felt like it would be lovely to play off of the idea of kind of a sip a day, and a lot of the themes that are woven through the book have to do with nature and being outside and breathing fresh air and the beauty of flowers. There's also beautiful nature and floral images that I've shot throughout the book, and I just think when we can stay a little bit more connected to our natural environment, it keeps our spirit a little happier and hopefully a little bit more positive to help us meet those goals and dreams that we desire.
Now, I find it really fascinating that when we can incorporate a daily regimen, if we want to call it something like that, that as we get into the habit, not only do we feel that our days are fulfilled, even if you do nothing much more than that, you just kind of get up for the day, you begin to get involved in what we're about to talk about here, you feel perky just like you're saying, and your days just feel longer, and pretty soon you're going to start thinking, well, how am I going to fill this time with more and more activities that are just going to make me happy in the first place?
Well, I do find it interesting that so often people will say things like, I just can't find the time. I'm so busy, and even older people. It's amazing. I teach at retirement communities. My work is mostly centered around retirement communities or working with people in chronic pain. But the busier individuals, what's so amazing is that as soon as they do start doing these exercises and they feel better, they find that they do have more time. They not only find the difference in the physical time and how they can accomplish things in the day, but when we're focusing on things like our breathing, which is crucial, and we're keeping our body well hydrated with plenty of good water, we start to really notice the difference also in our thinking. So the mind becomes clearer and what we could say more efficient. And then there's also a focus in the book, and in my life, on really supporting people, of course, in having a healthy cuisine. And then, too, we see that people don't have all those fluctuations in their mood swings and their emotions, so that they don't have those bursts of energy, and then they have those times where they just can't even get off the couch.
Right.
So we find that as we bring all of those things into balance, when we eat a plant-based cuisine and we're exercising, getting that fresh air, people find that the stability and the continuity throughout their day is very amazing.
Now, here's something that I'm kind of interested in, and just from your perspective, I mean, we're talking about 30 years of experience. You've dealt with quite an array of people from educational as well as career backgrounds and lifestyle backgrounds, I'm sure. When you take a look at incorporating this into your day, like you said, you just sort of feel this perk. Do you find procrastination tends to go down?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say that not only is it the procrastination that goes down, but a lot of times that procrastination is kind of caught up in the midst of maybe less than what I would call less than excellent thoughts. Mm-hmm. One of the other things that is so important is us getting in touch with the power of our mind and our thoughts. Mm-hmm. And when we really learn how to focus on the positivity, I think everything moves along differently, and that procrastination it seems to kind of almost evaporate.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
You're getting into this role of just a much more positive, accomplished place in your life, and when you have the energy to do it, and the enthusiasm, and the mind is focused, and the spirit feels light, it doesn't drag upon us these kind of, whatever it is, maybe, a report that's due, or maybe it's just cleaning the house. I just find that when we've started the day with either some of the exercises, I broke the book down into, there's all different chapters, and all of these exercises are indigenous practices. I called them all Fountain of Youth exercises, but whether it's yoga or whether it's something known as the 5 rites or Doin, when we just take a few minutes, ideally throughout the day, whether it's 5, 10, or 15 minutes first thing in the morning, if we take a little break at lunchtime, if we can maybe get another 10 or 15 minutes in at the end of the day or before dinner, it's just amazing how much more interest and energy we have. I just find it incredible. The procrastination just tends to not be an issue. It's a non-issue after that.
Mm-hmm. Now, yeah, I noticed that it's 15 minutes. Now, you see, it seems like every year, especially toward the end and into the beginning of the year, it's almost as though they're preying on people who want to do lifestyle changes. It's the new diet, so I've got this, or it's the new exercise regimen, so I've got this. And everybody seems to have a way that's the newest best thing. I mean, we're just infested with fads. But what you're talking about here, these are ancient, age-old traditions, if you will, that are really good. And you actually focus on people, who are later on in their lives, where the movement probably isn't as fast, and they may not have been exercising for a few years, but here's a nice, gentle approach to get you jump-started, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. It's true. All the models in my book, they range in age from 57 to 91, and I do feel that the ancient practices that are still around, that is really saying something. I don't know that some of these newer fads, we've watched them, even just in our life, right? They come and they go. But if we look back to the wisdom of the indigenous people, which was often very much like yoga, if you're familiar with the poses, the Western translation of many of the names are actually things like dog or cat or mountain or tree or lion or dolphin. They really watched nature, and they were much more in tune with the cycles and the rhythm and the energy of nature than we tend to be in this day and age. So partly when we focus on our breath and we tap back into some of these things that have been done for thousands of years by thousands of people before us, it really has a way of grounding and strengthening us, at least in a way that I haven't found any of the contemporary fads to take hold in my life. Plus, many of these newer things are just a spin-off of what's been around for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, even more interesting, so as I don't remember in these ancient traditions a term such as no pain, no gain.
Exactly.
Right. Now, let's go ahead and talk about some of the things that you have here in the Fountain of Youth exercises. The one area that I really found invigorating to use is where you talk about magical hands. And I've told people if you're ever feeling stressed, one of the things that you'll first notice if you pay attention is that your facial muscles, they tend to tighten up, and if you think about that for a minute, that'll cause you to have mood fluctuations, maybe even make some not so good decisions, and certainly you'll have trigger points of anger and irritability. And if you just would take your hands and sit somewhere for just even a minute and start just rubbing your face and giving yourself a facial massage, it's amazing how much that'll change you in just that moment. You actually show different techniques in that in your book.
Yes, I do. I agree with you 100%. A lot of times people feel that they would have to take a massage class, or that they have to get certified, or massage therapists have special gifts and have learned things. But the truth is, our intuition is very strong whenever we encourage it to be so and we believe it to be so. And that happens exactly what you're saying. If we can just take minutes a day to bring our hands to our own body. And it's kind of been so discouraged, for completely opposite and different reasons. But there are acupuncture points all over your body that by simply you taking your thumb, the tips of your fingers, and rubbing those points, you can stimulate those meridians and move that energy or that feeling, if it feels like tension or tightness. And the chapter in the book is called Do-in, and it's actually spelled D-O''IN. And Do-in was first introduced in this country pretty much through the Japanese people, actually. It was part of the macrobiotic movement where I first learned it quite a few decades ago. And I immediately felt a difference. I was amazed that I could just, they would start the macrobiotic summer camps in the morning with us getting up at dawn and doing these little routines where we would either pound or tap or rub, all over from the crown of our head to the soles of our feet. And many of us have experienced how good it feels to have reflexology, have somebody working on our feet. And you can do this yourself. I weave this into all of my classes and work with this particularly at the chronic pain clinic. And people report amazing differences and improvements in their health and their energy. So it's really something I encourage people to try out on themselves.
That's amazing to think that you can just take just moments at a time. And you're not talking about just 15 minutes all at once, but you're saying throughout the day?
Throughout the day is fine. Anytime you feel drawn, what happens is that when you begin this practice, you'll see that it's kind of almost contagious or magnetic. Usually people feel so good that they'll find that then, it's nice when we can give our body undivided attention, but I have many students that, they'll be watching TV or relaxing, and more they're taking and massaging each finger, or they're putting their feet up and working on their feet. And so it's really however it works for you, just so we do it. This act of Do-in, what we call Do-in these days, this is a practice that prefaced everything, meaning shiatsu, reflexology, acupuncture. Indigenous people first took the time out of their connection with nature and with themselves and their fascination and yearning for knowledge to begin working on themselves. Because the truth is, it's when you're working on yourself that you really can learn a lot about yourself, and you can learn a lot about the body. And so much in this day and age, we tend to just surrender to Western medicine and think we can't heal our body, or we can't fix this, or we can't make a difference, or we, unfortunately, seek an immediate, prescription medication or something to take away a symptom that is actually very sacred and is actually there to help us to understand more about our body, what our body is communicating to us. And Indigenous people saw this, and they worked with this. This is actually the foundation of every other practice. In the East, acupuncture was considered a last resort. And that's just a teeny tiny needle that barely, you can't even feel, usually touching the surface of your skin.
Right.
So their first go-to was always using the healing energy of their hands on their body first. And it really is like magic. I mean, it really can make a profound difference.
You know, and it's so amazing, as you mentioned earlier in the show, Naomi, is that one of the practices is to get in touch with our own mind. You know, where are our thoughts taking us? How much do they influence our moods, our attitudes, and certainly our decisions? And most importantly, also to be paying attention to and through, this practice we're talking about, like facial massage, rubbing your fingers, rubbing your arms, is to get in touch and in tune with what your body is telling you. After all, if it's aching, there's a pretty dadgum good reason why that's happening.
Right. So we're listening to our body, and some people, they don't have any pain or sensation, but they're doing it as a preventive measure. And in those cases, I think being able to become very mindful, so not only are we deepening our practice of listening, so to speak, but also focusing our mind, hopefully, on our breathing. I have a great chapter in Fountain of Youth, exercises on breathing, starting off with the basics, and a lot of people, they hear that and they think, well, of course I know how to breathe. I mean, I've been breathing my whole life. And the truth is, most of us never learn that unless we were a singer or, swimmer or played a wind instrument, some reason to learn it. And the thing that I find the most is that it is not only crucial to our longevity, but it is the area that most people need the most work. And I was kind of surprised. I mean, when I first started learning yoga myself, I was breathing incorrectly, and I was amazed at the difference that it made in my life to correct my breathing. But as I went on to teach, I mean, they say statistically that we use, as an average, about 25% of our lung capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And I have found over time that about 90% of the people that start yoga breathe incorrectly. And so it's really something to pay attention to. Use the computer, pick up my book, look for tools to help you to really deepen your breathing. And the mind is very helpful for that. So a lot of times what I have people do is engage the mind in focusing on their breathing, if that could use some more support, by even just saying the words, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out, in harmony with those movements. And you find that it really helps. We also have I have a chapter on meditation, and breathing really is the gateway into meditation, into focusing our mind. So as we move into that place, the next way we can use our mind and our thoughts that I think is very important, and I'm actually really excited about, is affirmations. So when I did mention this idea of positivity and positive thinking, I have heard for many years, and probably maybe many of the listeners also have heard about this idea of saying an affirmation or creating a visualization. But I think what happens is a lot of people say to me, oh, I tried that and it didn't work. And I'll say, well, how long did you try it? And, a couple of days, or I tried it a day. Or a lot of times what I find is not only do people not stay with it long enough to really begin to shift the tendency to not think as positively as we could, but they also didn't really take the time and go into the stillness to feel the words that they were saying. And I'm just finding, especially, so many of the people I work with are elderly, or they're at least over 50, and they're starting to think about, their youthfulness and wanting to have more energy and vitality, and it's been wonderful. In my yoga classes, I ask people to voice out loud their affirmations that they're working on each day. And it's become very inspiring to hear and watch what's been happening with people as they say, and they become more and more familiar with really putting it out there. Mm-hmm. I am youthful. What's it like as we're aging to really say, no, I am youthful, and so it's been really fun to keep working with the power of the mind.
I think, too, Naomi, is that we live in a culture, that's so bombarded with advertisement that you typically see, and this is something, if you listen to a long string of my shows, I bring up over and over again, and that is that we tend to be conditioned to be told that there's this unknown problem that we may have, and here's the solution we never knew was available. So you start to believe these things after a while, and when you take a look at the modality of aging, especially in America, it's quite different from what it seems to be like in Europe or like in other countries, especially from what you're showing in these exercises here, these ancient traditions where, age and wisdom, were celebrated, where here it's to be avoided, so to speak. There's quite a difference in the paradigm and the way that we think and talk when it comes to that, and you can see how what you're sharing here is so different.
Yes. It's really true, and it's actually sad to me to, as I started working more and more with people over 50, I would hear over and over people would say, well, I have aches and pains. It just comes with aging.
Exactly. We've been conditioned to believe that's part of how it is.
Exactly. I'd be like, excuse me, I don't believe that. And when I was doing research for Fountain of Youth exercises, I really appreciated reading about cultures, and you may be familiar with this too, where they found these kind of tucked away groups of people that weren't exposed to Western ideas and thoughts such as these, and they actually kept believing, because they saw no reason to believe otherwise, that as we aged, we were stronger. So consequently, in these villages, as people were getting into their 60s and 70s, they were the strongest, fastest. The men that would be out running and still, this was rather, they're still having to go out and hunt and acquire things with energy, with stamina. They were still, because that's what they grew up believing, they were the strongest. And we just really see how the power of mind influences us. So every day I really work to undo those negative, what I would call kind of self-sabotaging thoughts. We're just coming into our prime. We are stronger, clearer, wiser, and we just have to understand that. Who needs to know that is us, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you, and you can certainly see how doing what you have here in the book, it starts gentle, it starts slow, but it begins to build. So people get to experience little successes that lead to really big long-term results. And I think that's sometimes the trouble that we have. Again, part of our conditioning is bigger, part of it's better, part of it's faster, easier. And you don't realize that success really comes in little bitty steps, and 15 minutes a day, and even as you suggested in the program, Naomi, is that you don't have to do it all in 15 minutes right off the bat. You can do 2 minutes here, 2 minutes a little later on in the day, and then eventually, as you're suggesting, that over time, you're going to want to do it more and more because you're experiencing the results in a very subtle but very profound way.
Yes. I really have seen the results not only within myself, but now thousands of students over the years. It makes a huge difference when we speckle the day with conscious awareness of our body, our mind, and our spirit, where we really take time out for ourselves. I watch people that, I see what they go through to get up at the crack of dawn and go to the gym for an hour. They're in an artificial environment, breathing recycled air, working until they feel like they're going to drop, and then the whole rest of the day, they just go, and they don't pay any attention to themselves. And then we see how tired they are, and we watch what happens mentally with their focus and their energy. We see them go to Starbucks and pick themselves up with coffee. And that's not to make Starbucks wrong, but, we're looking instead to really have a sense of equilibrium that's more innate, that we're really tapping into an infinite well of energy that we have within us when we tap into that breathing and that fresh air, when we can get our bare feet out on the earth, not the concrete, but actually making contact with the earth for our endocrine system. These things, it's like getting us charged. We are like a battery that needs recharging, and these are the things that do that. And when we keep that happening throughout the day, Even 5 minutes here and there, it definitely makes a difference. Yeah.
Now, talk about some of the other things that you share within your book that our listeners should become aware of about, the good reasons to go with this.
Well, so we cover in the book yoga. I do think some people, especially over 50, even more so over 60, 70, they hear yoga and they think it's either like a cult from the 60s or you have to have some religious, thing. And the truth is, in this country, in the West here now, we are so blessed to have so many, many styles of yoga available to us and many teachers who have made yoga their own. I was trained at the Kripalu, which is a hatha, what's called a hatha-based yoga, and it is a very gentle yoga. Yoga really is simply stretching. So, I just want to take a minute in case there's any misconceptions about yoga, because I tend to run into them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And all you're doing really is stretching, but you're harmonizing your stretching with your breathing. And there are many teachers in this country. You don't have to chant, and you don't have to have any religious ideas. And there's many teachers that have a very, what I would call, westernized, practical, grounded, simple approach. We have many classes where they're called chair yoga. They start off very simple. So it's really worth going out into your area and just kind of seeing what's possible. I really encourage people to kind of just see if they can drop into a class and check that out. You're welcome, of course, to start with my book, Fountain of Youth Exercises. Every yoga pose, I show really simple modifications. Again, as I mentioned, I only had one 57-year-old. Most of the models in the book were in their 70s, 80s, 90s. And things like having just a little cloth strap where we take the strap and we kind of put it around the sole of the foot and we kind of lift the leg with the strap. You'll see some really gentle warming up stretches if you're not comfortable with the class. Maybe starting off with just some of those sitting really basic stretches and your breathing. There is a chapter on meditation, and it's actually a very interesting practice. A lot of people also, they hear meditation and they say, I can't do that, or I can't sit still. I don't want to sit still. It doesn't work for me. And I was really blessed to study with a man by the name of Tianko Ting. He's from Taiwan. And different countries in the East, whether it's called spontaneous qi in China or in yoga practices sometimes called meditation in motion or natural qi movement, these are practices where, and it can sound, in the beginning it can sound a little like, well, how could that work? But the gist of it is you're kind of letting your body move your body more than we usually do. Like, when you first wake up in the morning, Daniel, and you kind of just intuitively, naturally stretch your body, right?
Right.
Well, it's like if you were to allow that to continue to happen, where you would say, well, instead of just that, 30 seconds or a minute or two where I did that in bed in the morning, I'm going to go ahead and just keep seeing if I were to let my body move, how would it move? And it feels, in the beginning for most people, a little contrived and a little hard to quiet your mind and your self-judgment to be able to let that movement happen. But once you do, it's an amazingly powerful exercise. So I also talk about that in the book. And again, that's something, if you went to China in the park, you would see people doing spontaneous qi all over the place, or Tai Chi or some other qi practice, where here in the West, we just haven't grown up so much. Again, it's these other kind of, what I would say, limiting thoughts that have kind of, kept us inside an awful lot and kept us not moving as much as we certainly could be. So there's that form of movement in there as well. And then there's chapters on what I call longevity of mind, longevity of body, and longevity of spirit in Fountain of Youth Exercises. And in the mind, I mentioned a number of different exercises. Keeping our mind sharp is very important. And so a number of exercises are in there for that. longevity of spirit, we cover a lot of things like getting outside, pursuing artistic activities, pursuing your passion. You know, for a lot of us, we've been focused on raising a family or getting our careers off the ground, and we kind of put maybe musical instruments on hold or art classes. And so I really encourage people to just kind of maybe get in touch with some of those passions. That's really, I believe, the key to our longevity and our youthfulness is right there. And then in the longevity of body chapter, I talk a lot about nutrition. I have taught cooking and nutrition for 30 years. There's just no question. It makes a difference, and it's not just about exercise. You know, we really need to partner with, you know, wise choices in what we're eating. You know, I really do believe you are what you eat.
I've seen that, believe me. Oh, I'll tell you, wonderful stuff. You really cover the gamut. And again, what's wonderful about the Fountain of Youth exercises for vitality, radiance, joy, and fulfillment is that it's, you know, the simplicity of breaking it down real simply, you know, a minute, 2 minutes, several times a day, or 15 minutes, however you want to do it. You begin to feel the benefits of what you're actually doing over time, and you're going to want more of it. And I think sometimes we just get gung-ho coming out of the gate, that we start sprinting, then we end up exhausted. We look back on that experience and go, wow, that didn't feel very good or get me what I wanted to as quickly as I thought it did. And pretty soon you're giving up, and then you're back into the same thing all over again. Certainly this will guide you to avoid those kind of pitfalls.
It's so true. You know, my goal was really to set out to create attainable and maintainable support. And over the years of teaching, I've just seen that is a primary pitfall. You know, we can be very overzealous. You know, I started off in the book pretty slow, just recommending people to either maybe read the whole book through once, you know, and then just approach it chapter by chapter. And we really need to be patient with ourselves. And also, I wouldn't necessarily call these things quick fixes. Usually most people do start to feel a difference, especially if they've been breathing in correctly. And, you know, they'll start to say, well, you know, maybe this is making a difference, and so, okay, I can add a little bit more, and then, you know, a little bit more. And, you know, I have students that started coming to my yoga class. I have one gentleman who started at 92, and he had never done yoga before. His wife brought him. That's not uncommon. And he's now 96, and it was very amazing, like watching him, and I just kept saying, start really slow. So I just encourage everybody, especially when they're starting at that age, to go very gently. And it was amazing to watch him, you know, like, for instance, like the little strap exercises I talked about, like, he would take the strap, and he was incredibly stiff. He would lift his heel would come off the floor maybe an inch or so. And now there's times when I sit up in front of the class and I watch him at 96, and his toe is equal to the crown of his head when he lifts his leg up.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, they're so wonderful and so appreciative all the time. And I said, no, you have no idea how much you inspire me. It's the gift of working with older people who are pacing themselves and really gently embodying a whole new lifestyle. It just affirms everything that I've heard and believe to be true about the resilience and the strength of the human body. It really is true. It's amazing what the body can do. The body wants to be moving, you know, but, you know, we've got to be putting the right fuel in there and have the right thoughts so we don't, again, limit ourselves with our thoughts. And, you know, the other thing, too, I just feel a lot of people get a little dehydrated. You know, they're just not drinking water enough to really keep their body fluid enough. So when the body has enough hydration and the right foods, and they start very gently it's again very, very. We set very minimal goals, and it's that tortoise or the hare, or that the tortoise or the hare thing, right? You know, like we're just really going along at that tortoise pace and making sure, because, like, especially at the chronic pain clinic, people get very zealous and they get excited, they get inspired. They're finally in a program that sounds very interesting, but you know, you don't want to then increase any pain and set yourself back a day or two.
Right.
So, you know, I also have another book. It's called Yoga in Bed. I mean, I start off with people just that are convalescing, and they can't even get out of bed, or they need to really go slow. We just start off even with exercises on top of the bed. So a lot of people they set up these limitations, like they think, oh, I can't get down on a yoga mat, or I don't want to do this, or I can't do that. We have a modification for everything.
Oh boy.
And where there's a will, there's a way. We just have to, again, get past any thoughts that we might have otherwise, because there really is a lot of information out there for us these days to make all of these exercises our own, you know, at a pace that's really right for us.
I couldn't agree with you more, and it's just 15 minutes. And you can start in bed.
Exactly.
How much easier is it supposed to get here, folks?
Really.
Naomi, do you have a website people can find out more?
I do. It's my name, Naomi Call, so it's NaomiCall.com. And then the books also, there's yogainbed.com, and there's information about that book there. And Thinhorn Press, my wonderful press out of Scotland, the books are also available, and information about me on their website at Thinhorn Press as well.
Naomi, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Well, thank you so much, Daniel. It's been a pleasure to speak with you.
You bet. Again, you can start in bed, and you can get to the Fountain of Youth even starting there in just 15 minutes a day. Again, thanks.
Thank you.
We also want to thank you, the listeners. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to visit us at our website at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. Sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter. Also be sure to visit our blog. We archive our shows so you can listen at your convenience and share with others as well. I'm Daniel Davis. This is Beyond 50, and remember, live your day past halfway.